Oh great, another bleeding heart who thinks she's special. That is what station manager Derek Caldwell said 47 minutes before a 3-star general walked onto his platform. The Houston subway station at 6:16 p.m., fluorescent lights flickering over grimy tile, the smell of brake dust and stale coffee mixing with ozone from the electrical rails, metal turnstiles clicking their rhythmic percussion. Ashley Cooper moves through the rush-hour crowd in nurse scrubs still damp from her shift, her gait slightly uneven, a barely perceptible limp favoring her left leg. She carries a plastic-wrapped package, worn combat boots, the leather cracked and stained dark in places where Ramadi dust had dried into the seams, her brother's last belongings that she's finally taking to be preserved. The boots weigh almost nothing. They feel impossibly heavy. Near the northern platform edge, beneath a flickering advertisement for personal injury lawyers, a homeless man sits with his back against the wall. His cardboard sign rests on his lap, the lettering uneven, help. Vet. Ramadi 2008. His hands move in slow, deliberate American Sign Language, fingers articulating with the precision of someone who learned it in a combat zone where words could give away positions. Help. Please. Anything. His jacket is torn at the elbow, the fabric underneath stained a color that might have been olive drab before it faded. But beneath the jacket, Ashley notices something that makes her pause, the way his collar sits, high and protective on his neck. The way he positions his back against the wall with his eyes on the stairs. Survival architecture. She knows it the way some people know breathing. A group of 5 commuters near the platform benches notices him. Young professionals, their faces glowing with the self-satisfied exhaustion of people who've had important days. They begin flapping their hands mockingly at his signing, their movements exaggerated and cruel, fingers splayed like broken wings. Laughter. High-pitched and sharp as breaking glass. One of them, a man in a charcoal suit with a $3,000 watch, makes a sound designed to mock sign language, something between a grunt and a laugh. The other commuters join in. The deaf veteran's hands stop moving. His eyes close for exactly 2 seconds. Ashley's jaw tightens imperceptibly. The muscle at her temple contracts once. She continues walking toward the platform, but her pace changes, measured now, controlled, the kind of measure that comes from someone learning to contain something volcanic inside. Her brother had the same jaw. He'd had the same way of going very still before breaking things. She shifts the plastic-wrapped boots to her other hand. From his office window on the second-floor administrative platform, station manager Derek Caldwell watches the scene unfold with the casual interest a man might give a television program. He's 48 years old, with the soft midsection of someone who hasn't seen his feet without bending his waist in 5 years. His hair is gray in a distinguished way that his tailor's bills and his car payment suggest is very intentional. He sits in a mesh executive chair that costs more than most of his employees make in a month, and he leans back with the satisfaction of a man who has built an empire of petty grievances and inflated invoices. His fingers move across his phone as his eyes remain on the platform below. He's already composing the email to his contact at the Transit Authority, another maintenance overcharge, another $340,000 that will never see a shovel or a paint can. The smirk that crosses his face has nothing to do with the commuters or the veteran. It has to do with power. It has to do with knowing that no one here, not the deaf man, not the laughing commuters, not the tired nurse in scrubs, has any ability to disrupt the machinery he's built. True class is what you do when the lights go out. Caldwell has never known darkness. He assumes he never will. He watches as the commuters continue their mockery for exactly 37 more seconds. Then something changes on the platform below. The nurse has stopped walking. She's standing motionless, her face pointed away from the commuters, toward the southbound tunnel where the next train is approaching. But something in her stillness is different now. It's the kind of still that precedes movement. The kind of stillness a predator uses before it strikes. Caldwell's thumb hovers over his phone. Something in his primitive brain registers danger. He ignores it. He leans forward, suddenly interested in how this plays out. Ashley's eyes are on the veteran now. Really on him, not just passing awareness but focus. She's doing the calculation that military personnel do in certain moments: distance to threat, 18 feet, number of hostiles, 5, time to de-escalation, 40 seconds, maybe less, cost of intervention, unknown, potentially catastrophic. She's doing this while appearing to do nothing at all. Her breathing hasn't changed. Her face hasn't changed. But the calculation is complete. She turns. She walks directly toward the commuters and the veteran sitting between them like geography. Caldwell's interest sharpens. He sets down his phone. This is unexpected. This is entertainment. The charcoal suit man sees her coming. He prepares a face to meet hers, the face people make when they know they've been witnessed and don't care. The face of someone who has never experienced consequences in his life. "Excuse me," Ashley says. Her voice is soft. Its softness is strategic. It's the softness of a person who knows how to make people lean in, how to make them listen for something they can't quite hear. "Could I ask you all something?" The suit man grins. His friends grin. This is better than mockery. This is confrontation with someone who looks genuinely concerned about them. This is a nurse, clearly, from the scrubs, which means she probably cares about people, and that means she can be played like an instrument. "What's that?" he says. Ashley shifts the plastic-wrapped boots to her left hip. The movement is small, but it changes her balance entirely. Her weight distributes differently. Her stance shifts by 2 degrees. "Can any of you hear?" she asks. "Can we hear?" The suit man laughs. His friends laugh. "Yeah, we can hear." "Good," Ashley says. "Then you heard what he said. And you understood what he meant. Which means you were choosing to mock him anyway. Not because you didn't understand. Because you did." She turns to face the veteran fully. She makes no gesture toward the commuters. She makes no facial expression that includes them. They have already ceased to exist in the geography of her attention. "Sir, I'm going to step inside the train platform boundary for just a moment. I promise I'm not going anywhere." The veteran's hands begin to move in ASL, fingers articulating too quickly, asking her name, asking if she can sign, asking if she's, but then he stops. Because something in her bearing has told him she can. Caldwell rises from his chair. Something in his chest has begun to accelerate. A feeling he hasn't had in perhaps a decade, the feeling that he has misunderstood something fundamental about what he's watching. He walks to the office door and opens it. The better to see. The better to understand exactly what is about to happen. The southbound train is now visible in the tunnel. Its headlight approaching like a question that demands an answer. The fluorescent lights above continue their irregular flickering, and somewhere in the station machinery, a compressor hisses, the sound of air pressure equalizing, of systems reaching equilibrium. But not for long. The charcoal suit man has recovered his equilibrium. He steps toward Ashley with the confidence of someone who has never been denied anything. "Look, lady, he's just..." "Not your turn," Ashley says. Still soft. Still measured. Still composed in a way that would register, in certain corners of certain military installations, as the sound of a particular kind of warning. "You had your turn. You used it to mock someone who survived something you've never even imagined." Caldwell's hand tightens on the office door frame. The train is 40 seconds from the platform. And that's when the real nightmare began. Ashley's jaw clenched. Not visibly. Just the muscles at the hinge tightening for a single second before her face smoothed back to stone. She stood. Turned. Moved toward the deaf veteran with a kind of purposeful calm that made the air around her feel different, thinner, charged, like the moment before lightning. Caldwell watched from the stairwell landing, arms crossed. He hadn't expected her to come back. The veteran's eyes widened as Ashley approached, his fingers already moving in desperate signs: "Help, please, water, cold." Ashley's hands rose, and the signs that came back were not hospital signs. They were something else entirely. Her fingers formed patterns with military precision, a tap to the collarbone, a sweep across the chest, a specific angled motion toward the heart. Field signs. Triage codes. The kind of silent communication used in firefights when voices would draw sniper fire. Across the platform, a man in a faded army jacket straightened. His jaw tightened the same way Ashley's had moments before. She knew those signs. She'd seen them once, in a nightmare she'd spent 9 years trying to forget. Those were Ramadi hand signals. Combat medic signals. The kind that meant get the casualty to safety, cardiac assessment, prepare for airway. Her eyes locked on Ashley's hands, and the recognition hit him like incoming rounds. That woman wasn't just a nurse. Caldwell descended the stairs, his footsteps deliberate, echoing through the station like a metronome counting down to something. His voice, when it came, was pitched loud enough for the entire platform to hear. Loud enough for his 2 security guards to know he wanted an audience. Well. Bleeding Heart wants to play hero. He stopped 3 feet from Ashley, close enough that his shadow fell across her and the veteran. Close enough that his cologne, something expensive and aggressively masculine, filled the narrow space between them. Tell you what. I'm betting you $50 you walk away in 5 minutes when you realize this guy isn't worth your time. He looked at his guards. Both of them shifted, waiting for the cue. These nurse types always do, he continued, his smile widening. Give them a sob story, a camera phone, and they think they're on Grey's Anatomy. Reality check, lady, this is a business. My business. And I don't run a charity ward. Ashley's hands continued moving. Her face remained completely neutral, not cold, not angry, just absent. As if Caldwell's voice was ambient noise, the same as the fluorescent light hum above them or the distant rumble of another train through the tunnels. The veteran signed again, thank you, please, thank you. Caldwell stepped forward. His boot connected with the small paper cup at the veteran's side, and coins erupted across the concrete platform like shrapnel, spinning and rolling in all directions. Some tumbled toward the platform edge, coming to rest inches from the drop into the tracks below. The sound of metal on concrete echoed, sharp, final, deliberate. Oops, Caldwell said, his voice dripping with theatrical innocence. He reached down and grabbed the veteran's small bundle of belongings, a sleeping bag, a thin jacket, a worn backpack stuffed with perhaps $30 worth of possessions representing everything the man owned in the world. Pick these up, sweetheart, since you care so much, Caldwell said, and tossed the bundle toward the platform edge. The backpack landed hard, one strap draped over the danger line, swaying as if considering whether to fall. Phone cameras rose throughout the crowd like mushrooms after rain. 40, 50 people now, all recording, all silent except for the soft clicks of video starting, the ambient whispers of people who had never seen cruelty staged so publicly before. Ashley knelt. No hesitation, no visible anger, no theatrical surrender. Just a smooth lowering of her body to the platform floor, her movements mechanical and precise. She began collecting coins. 1, 2, 3. Each one placed carefully into the cup. Her hands moved like a surgeon's hands might move, economical, confident, knowing exactly where each piece of the puzzle belonged. The deaf veteran's signs became frantic, blessing, thank you, saint, angel, thank you. His eyes were watering. Caldwell stood above her, watching. Expecting her to break. Expecting some moment where she would flinch, where the weight of his power would finally press down hard enough to make her crack. It happened eventually with everyone. Everyone had a limit. Ashley's hands moved again as she knelt, and this time her signs were directed at the veteran. The army veteran in the faded jacket moved closer, his body cutting through the crowd like water flowing around a stone. Her fingers tapped a specific rhythm against her own shoulder, cardiac assessment, pressure point 5, status unknown, hold position. Not civilian ASL. Not anything a regular person would understand. Jesus, the army veteran whispered to himself. She's running a triage assessment. In sign. Caldwell was still talking. His voice had taken on an edge now, sharper, less amused. "You know what I find interesting, nurse? I find it interesting that you think this station can just function based on emotion. Feelings. Charity." He pulled out his phone. "I've got contracts. I've got maintenance agreements with the city worth $847,000 a year. I've got inspectors, auditors, people who care about whether this platform is properly maintained and documented. One phone call and I can have you cited for harassment. Practicing without a license. Endangering passengers." He dialed. Waited. His voice shifted into something more polished. "Yeah, it's Caldwell. I need to report a situation at the downtown station. There's a nurse here, no badge, no authorization, engaging in medical procedures on a transit passenger. Yeah. Unprovoked. Yeah, I'll wait for documentation." He hung up, smiled at Ashley. "They're sending someone. Hope you've got your license handy." Ashley remained kneeling. The last coin went into the cup. She placed it gently beside the veteran, then began collecting the scattered belongings, the backpack, the sleeping bag, the jacket. Her movements continued their precise mechanical quality, as if Caldwell's voice existed in an entirely different dimension from the one where her body moved through space. The Army veteran was close enough now to see her hands clearly as she handed the veteran's belongings back to him. He saw the way her fingers formed the signs, saw the specific triage patterns, and something in his chest went tight. Those hands had held lives together under fire. Those hands had extracted shrapnel from bodies in the dark. Those hands had belonged to a legend that everyone said had died in Ramadi 9 years ago. "Nightingale," he whispered. He said it so quietly that almost no one heard it. But one person did. The veteran's eyes went wide. His hands began signing frantically. You're the medic, the one from Fallujah, the one who carried me, you're real. Ashley's composure didn't shift. She was already standing, brushing dust from her scrubs. The combat boots package was still where she dropped it on the platform, wrapped carefully in plastic. She picked them up. Her brother's boots. The only piece of him she had left. And then the station lights flickered. It was a small thing, just a momentary brownout, the kind that happened sometimes when multiple trains ran on the line simultaneously. But in that moment of darkness, less than a second, barely perceptible, everything changed. Something in the air pressure of the station shifted. Something invisible but absolute. The veteran's breathing suddenly became labored. His hand clutched at his chest. His face, which had been grey before, now turned the color of old concrete. His lips, already pale, began to take on a blue tint at the edges. "No, the Army veteran said, recognition flooding his voice. "That's not good. That's not good at all." Caldwell was still on his phone, still arranging consequences for a woman he didn't understand and would never understand. The platform hummed with the sound of fluorescent lights returning to full brightness. The ambient noise of the station, distant announcements, the echo of footsteps, the mechanical breathing of the ventilation system, continued as if nothing was about to happen. But Ashley had already seen what was coming. She'd seen it in the way the veteran's pupils dilated, in the specific pattern of his distress, in the color of his skin. She'd seen it in 100 triage scenarios, in 1,000 dark moments she'd spent 9 years pretending never happened. The deaf veteran collapsed backward onto the platform concrete, his body going slack, his hand still clutching at his chest as if he could manually hold his heart together. His hand went to his chest. Grey flooded his face like a tide pulling the color away. The deaf veteran's fingers splayed across his ribs, and his mouth opened without sound, a silent scream that needed no interpretation. Then his knees buckled. The concrete came up to meet him. His body folded backward with the weight of dead meat, shoulders striking first, head whipping back hard enough that Ashley heard the impact, a wet thud like a melon dropped from a second-story window. His lips were already turning blue. Not the slow blue of cyanosis creeping in over minutes. The fast blue. The dying blue. His eyes rolled back, showing whites, and his hand scrabbled at the air as if he could claw his way back to breathing. The platform erupted. 3 women screamed. A man in a business suit backed away, bumping into a trash can. Commuters formed a perimeter around the collapsed man like he'd become something contagious, phones rising, recording, everyone frozen in that particular paralysis of witnessing emergency, the split second where the brain hasn't yet accepted that this is real and happening right now, not on a screen somewhere. Caldwell's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Stop making a scene. Step away. The paramedics are coming." He descended the platform stairs with his security guard trailing behind, moving toward Ashley with the gait of a man who'd already decided this was her fault. "I told you to stop. I told you to wait for professionals. Now look what you've done." Ashley didn't hear him. She was already moving. Her hands registered what her eyes had seen, the position of the collapsed man's body, the angle of his chest, the way his breathing had stopped entirely, not gasping, not struggling, but absent. The blue wasn't hypoxia. The blue was something else. Something she'd seen before in a triage tent in Ramadi when a Marine came in with shrapnel embedded 2 centimeters from his heart, the sac around the muscle filling with blood until there was nowhere left for the organ to beat. Cardiac tamponade. The shrapnel scar on his chest, she'd glimpsed it when he collapsed, visible under his thin shirt. Not old shrapnel. Not healed. Still lodged there, close enough to the pericardium that when he'd clutched his chest just now, something had shifted. A piece of metal had moved. Blood was filling the sac. The heart was running out of room to pump. He had maybe 90 seconds before total cardiac arrest. Ashley's hands moved on their own. 3 years at Seattle General, 3 years of pushing a mop and working ICU nights without a license, building her cover, staying invisible, meant she'd never assembled a true emergency kit. But she prepared anyway. Always prepared. The habit of survival ran deeper than any civilian identity. The kit was in her scrub pocket. Sterile. Sealed. Marked only with a small red cross she'd embroidered herself. She opened it with her teeth while dropping to her knees beside the veteran's body. The needle was exactly what she needed, a 14-gauge angiocath needle, long enough to reach through the chest wall, through the ribs, through the pericardial sac. She'd stolen it from surgical supplies 3 months ago, before she fully understood why she was stealing it. Her subconscious had known. Her subconscious always knew. "Get back," she said to the gathering crowd. Not a request. A command. The same tone she'd used in Ramadi when she needed corpsmen to move, to clear space, to understand that seconds were currency and they were spending it. They moved. Caldwell was still talking. "An authorized medical procedure, I'm calling the police right now." His voice had taken on a note of panic now, the panic of a man watching his authority dissolve in real time. He pulled his phone out, started dialing, but he didn't leave. He stood 3 feet away, watching, unable to look away from what was happening. Ashley's fingers found the landmark, the 4th intercostal space, midclavicular line, right side of the sternum. The place between the ribs where blood was drowning a man's heart. She'd done this procedure once in training, once under controlled conditions with an instructor's hands guiding hers. The needle had to go in at exactly 45 degrees. Had to pierce the pericardial sac without puncturing the myocardium itself. Had to be done in seconds without hesitation because hesitation was death. The needle went in. There was resistance, the tough fibrous sac resisting penetration, and then the give, the sudden release of pressure as the needle broke through into the fluid-filled space. The hiss of air escaping. Blood. Immediately, nearly 400 milliliters of it, dark and wrong and flowing backward out through the angiocath like a reverse transfusion. The pressure inside the sac released in that instant. The heart, suddenly given room to beat again, seized once, a violent convulsion, and then found its rhythm. The veteran's eyes fluttered. His mouth gasped open. His lips were still blue, but oxygen was reaching his brain now. The crisis had moved from 90 seconds to gone, from dying to alive, in the space between one heartbeat and another. Ashley kept her hand absolutely steady on the needle. Not trembling. Not shaking. Hands that had held lives together in the dark knew how to hold steady when everything else was falling apart. Her voice, when she spoke, came out level and clinical. I need tape. Someone's phone light. And tell the paramedics when they arrive that I've performed emergency pericardiocentesis for presumed cardiac tamponade from retained shrapnel. Vitals are stabilizing. Tell them the needle is in place and I'm managing fluids. A man in the crowd, the veteran who'd been watching her before, the one who'd recognized her military field signs, stepped forward immediately. He had the presence of someone used to following orders. I've got tape. His voice was shaking. He pulled a roll of athletic tape from his gym bag, hands moving with the jerky precision of someone operating on adrenaline. Jesus, the veteran whispered, staring at her hands. Jesus, that's a combat technique. Where did you learn that? Ashley didn't answer. She was securing the needle against the skin, creating a sterile anchoring point, working with the automaticity of muscle memory. The kind of knowledge that lived in your hands after you'd done it 100 times in 100 different scenarios, most of them in places that didn't officially exist. Sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer. The sound cut through the crowd like a scream, and more people began backing away, creating space for the paramedics who would arrive in, 60 seconds? Maybe 90? She's a combat medic, the veteran said quietly to no one in particular. He was holding the combat boots now, Ashley's brother's boots, still partly wrapped in plastic, which she dropped when the veteran collapsed. The veteran was holding them like they were relics. Look at the technique. That's not nursing school. That's Ramadi. That's JSOC triage. Caldwell's face had gone white. Not pale with concern. White with rage. The kind of white that comes from realizing your narrative has shattered, that whatever you'd planned to say to the police officers who were now 10 minutes away was becoming irrelevant. He stepped back toward the stairs, phone still in his hand, his security guard hovering uncertainly. This isn't over, Caldwell said. The words came out small and bitter. I don't care what you just did. I'm still calling this in. Unauthorized medical practice. Creating a public disturbance. Violating station protocol. Ashley didn't respond. She was counting the veteran's respirations now, monitoring the rise and fall of his chest, watching for signs of reaccumulation. 22 breaths a minute. Coming down from the panic rate. Stabilizing. The paramedics burst through the platform entrance, moving with the coordinated precision of people who'd handled 100 emergencies. Two of them, a woman with a thick brown braid and a man with sergeant stripes on his sleeve. They took one look at the collapsed veteran, at the needle still anchored in his chest, at Ashley's steady hands, and something shifted in their eyes. What do we have? The sergeant paramedic asked. Cardiac tamponade, Ashley said. Presumed retained shrapnel from old injury. Pericardiocentesis performed approximately 4 minutes ago. Vitals are respiratory rate 22, heart rate 105, blood pressure 88/62 and rising. He's been conscious for the last 2 minutes. The paramedic looked at her. Really looked at her. At the way her hands were absolutely still. At the precision of her terminology. At her eyes, which held the particular flatness of someone who'd seen worse. Where'd you learn that? He asked. Nursing school covers emergency procedures, Ashley said, which was not technically a lie. Nursing school did cover emergency procedures. It just hadn't covered them to this level of expertise, in these conditions, with this kind of instinctive muscle memory. The female paramedic was already preparing their equipment, a proper trauma stretcher, bags for fluids, their own monitoring equipment. We're going to take over from here. Can you brief us while we move? Ashley stood, and that's when her hand started to shake. Just slightly. Just the tremor that comes after the adrenaline starts wearing off, when your body finally registers that it just executed a procedure that had maybe a 2-second margin for error and managed not to puncture the victim's heart in the process. She clasped her hands together, pressing her palms flat against each other, and the trembling stopped. The paramedics transferred the veteran onto their stretcher with practiced efficiency. His hands were moving, labored but insistent, his eyes locked on Ashley. The veteran who'd been watching, the combat veteran, stepped forward and signed back to him, his hands moving with the halting quality of someone who knew the language but hadn't used it in years. The collapsed man's face changed. His eyes filled. He was crying and signing simultaneously, hands describing something about Ramadi, about 9 years ago, about a woman who'd carried him through sniper fire with her hand steady and her voice calm and her presence like something that couldn't be killed. "He's saying you saved him," the combat veteran told Ashley quietly. "In Ramadi. He's saying you saved him 9 years ago and you just saved him again." The paramedics were already moving, wheeling the stretcher toward the exit, their radio crackling with coordinates for Seattle General, Bay assignments, alert for incoming trauma. The blue lights from the ambulance outside were painting the platform in alternating shades of emergency. Caldwell approached with 2 police officers trailing behind him. His tie had been straightened. His face had been rearranged into an expression of grave concern, the expression of a manager who'd just witnessed a crisis and was deeply disappointed by how it was handled. "Officers," he said, his voice now carrying the tone of someone sharing regrettable information with authority figures, "this woman performed an unauthorized medical procedure on transit property. She created a public disturbance. She directly refused my orders to wait for proper emergency personnel. I need her removed and cited for trespassing." One of the officers, a woman with gray at her temples and the eyes of someone who'd seen enough to know when she was being fed a line, turned to Ashley. "I'm going to need you to come with us. There's going to be an investigation into practicing medicine outside your license scope." Ashley nodded once. Just once. Not in agreement. In acknowledgement. The combat veteran was still holding her brother's boots. The plastic wrap had torn when she dropped them. One boot had tumbled partially out, and he was holding it like something sacred, like it was made of something more fragile than leather and memory. The officer was professional but firm. "You're being issued a citation for trespassing and ordered to stay away from all transit property pending the investigation. Do you understand?" "I understand," Ashley said. Her voice had dropped an octave. The trembling in her hands had stopped. What remained was something colder. Something that had been forged in places that didn't appear on any map. As they moved toward the platform stairs, Caldwell called after her. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before playing hero, sweetheart." He said it loudly. Loud enough for the remaining crowd to hear. Loud enough for the news cameras that had arrived, drawn by the sirens and the spectacle, to catch on microphone. Caldwell straightened his tie again and stepped directly in front of the nearest camera. This individual was a vigilante nurse playing hero, endangering passengers and violating critical safety protocols. "We have strict regulations for a reason, and I will not tolerate this kind of reckless endangerment on transit property." Ashley didn't look back. But her hands were shaking again. Not from the aftermath of adrenaline this time. Something deeper. Something that felt like 9 years of invisible weight suddenly pulling at her bones, trying to drag her under, trying to remind her that she'd given up the right to be seen when she'd accepted that black site assignment in Ramadi. The officer led her up the stairs. Behind her, the combat veteran was still holding her brother's boots, his face twisted with the expression of someone who'd just watched history collapse and reform in the space between one heartbeat and another. She'd saved a man's life. And bought herself a trespassing citation. That wasn't the worst part, though. The worst part was that somewhere in a Houston news van, a producer was already pulling together footage of Caldwell's statement, of her being led away by police, of the dramatic rescue that would make for perfect evening broadcast material. The worst part was that her face was on camera now. In public. In a way that couldn't be unseen. The worst part was that somewhere, someone at the Pentagon was probably watching that same broadcast and making a phone call that would start the machinery of revelation turning, the machinery that would bring every classified moment of her Ramadi service crashing back into the light. She had no idea how fast that machinery moved. The paramedics arrived in 47 seconds. Ashley knew because she'd counted. The first responder, a woman with kind eyes and a trauma patch on her jacket, knelt beside the deaf veteran and asked the question that would change everything. What did you do to him? Ashley didn't look up from the man's chest, still monitoring the rise and fall. Cardiac tamponade. Pericardial fluid compressing the heart. I performed pericardiocentesis with a 14-gauge needle through the fifth intercostal space. Released approximately 200 milliliters of fluid. His BP stabilized. O2 sat climbed from 68 to 94. The paramedic blinked. You did an emergency thoracic procedure on a subway platform. He was dying. The second paramedic, a man with a radio clipped to his shoulder, exchanged a look with his partner. Are you a doctor? Nurse. Ashley's voice was steady, clinical. The kind of voice that came from someone who'd given medical reports under much worse circumstances. Registered. Licensed in Texas. The procedure was indicated. The patient was in cardiac arrest. I used equipment from my personal emergency kit, sterile 14-gauge angiocath needle, sterilized with alcohol swab. Needle went in clean. Pressure released. Sinus rhythm returned. The paramedics worked around her as she stepped back, her hands finally dropping to her sides. The veteran's eyes fluttered open. His lips were pink now, not blue. The color of someone who could breathe again. Derek Caldwell watched from the platform's far end, his phone already in his hand. His expression had shifted from amusement to something colder, calculation. He turned away from the scene, walking quickly back toward the administrative corridor. By the time the paramedics had the veteran loaded into the ambulance, Caldwell was in his office on the second floor, door locked, making calls. First call, Preston Whitmore, Transit Board President. They'd gone to business school together in 2001, shared a dorm room, shared a lot of things. More importantly, Preston had been receiving supplemental payments from Caldwell's maintenance contracts for 3 years. The kind of payments that didn't appear in any official record. We have a problem, Caldwell said without preamble. What kind of problem? A nurse. Just saved someone on the platform using emergency procedures. Performed surgery on public property without authorization. There are cameras. There are witnesses. If this becomes a regulatory thing, if anyone starts asking questions about station operations, about why we're paying those maintenance costs, about... I understand. Preston's voice dropped. What do you need? File a complaint with the state medical board. Say she practiced medicine without a license. Say she endangered passengers. I'll file a trespassing complaint. Get the police involved. By tonight, she'll have a citation. By tomorrow, she'll be under investigation. By next week, nobody will care about anything except whether she's facing felony charges. The second call went to Councilman Rodriguez, who owed him a larger favor and was therefore more useful. Then the State Medical Licensing Board directly, where Caldwell had a contact in complaint processing. Then a friend in the Houston Police Department. 5 calls in 14 minutes. 5 separate narratives about the same woman, each one shaped slightly differently, each one designed to bury her. By 4:36 p.m., 2 police officers were walking onto the subway platform where crowds still lingered, recording on their phones, talking about what they'd seen. The officers moved through the murmuring crowd with the calm confidence of people who knew they were coming for the right person. Ashley was checking the floor where the veteran had collapsed, making sure no broken glass or debris had been left behind. She was still wearing her scrubs. She was still wearing that small silver pin on her chest, the one made from aircraft wreckage and shrapnel, the one nobody had ever asked about in all her years at Seattle General's Houston rotation. Ashley Cooper. The officer's voice was professional, neutral. She looked up. Saw the uniforms. Saw the second officer taking a step to her left, blocking the platform exit. She'd been in enough tactical situations to read a room in half a second. This wasn't a conversation. This was an arrest approach. Yes, she said. We have a citation for you. Trespassing, practicing medicine without a license, endangering public safety. The officer handed her the paperwork. You're being ordered to vacate this station and not return pending investigation by the Medical Licensing Board and the Houston Police Department. The words came at her like they were being spoken underwater. Trespassing. Medicine without a license. She'd used a needle and her hands to save a human life, and now those same hands were being told they'd committed a crime. The man was in cardiac arrest, Ashley said. There was no alternative. Wait time for emergency services would have been fatal. That's between you and the licensing board, the officer said. Not unkindly, but with the finality of someone reading from a script. For now, you need to leave the station. News cameras appeared as they walked toward the exit. 3 different crews, like they'd been waiting, like they already knew. The reporters converged with the synchronized hunger of animals sensing blood in water. Miss Cooper, did you perform an unauthorized medical procedure? Are you a doctor? The station manager is making a statement. Caldwell appeared on the platform behind them, perfectly framed in the camera lights. His expression was almost sad, like he was being forced to deliver bad news about someone he'd been rooting for. It's tragic, really, he said to the cameras. This young woman saw someone in distress and wanted to help. But the proper way to help is to call paramedics, not to perform surgical interventions on a public platform. She meant well, I'm sure, but good intentions don't replace medical licensing. She endangered not just the patient but every passenger here. We have rules for a reason. The cameras swung back to Ashley. She was standing between 2 police officers, a trespassing citation in her hand, her scrubs still bearing the dried blood of the man she'd saved. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were flat. The cameras loved her composure because they didn't understand what it actually was. It wasn't acceptance. It was the calm that came from having survived worse. Much worse. She didn't look at Caldwell. She didn't defend herself. She walked out of the station between the officers, each step measured, each movement controlled. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice, when the reporters called after her, didn't crack. That night, she sat at her kitchen table still wearing her scrubs. The citation was laid out in front of her on white paper with official letterheads and case numbers. She'd been holding the same cold mug of coffee for 23 minutes. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light, which hummed with the particular frequency of failing fluorescence. Her daughter came through the front door at 6:14 p.m., returned from the neighbor's house where she'd been since school ended at 3:30. She was 10 years old, dark-haired like her mother, with the kind of observational skills that came from having raised herself halfway. Mommy. Her voice shifted immediately, the way children's voices do when they sense something wrong. Why are you home early? Ashley didn't answer at first. She was still looking at the citation, at the words that described her as a threat to public safety. Her daughter came closer, saw the paperwork, the official stamps. Mommy, did you get fired? Ashley's shoulders shook once. Twice. Her professional composure, the armor she'd built over 8 years of hiding, cracked for exactly 4 seconds. A tear ran down her cheek and she wiped it away, but more came. She couldn't stop them. Not because of the citation. Because of what came with it. I don't know, baby. I don't know, she whispered. Her daughter climbed into her lap, too big really at 10, her limbs too long, but Ashley held her anyway, held her like the child might disappear if she didn't grip hard enough. You didn't do anything wrong, did you? Or the girl asked. No. Ashley's voice was barely audible. I did what I was trained to do. That was the problem. That was the entire problem. For 8 years, Ashley Cooper had been living a life that existed in a single dimension. Nurse. Mother. Quiet woman who worked double shifts and brought her daughter to school and volunteered for the graveyard rotation. Normal life. Approved life. Safe life. But 8 years before that, she'd been Master Chief Petty Officer Ashley Marie Cooper, call sign Nightingale. She'd been part of a classified Special Forces operation in Ramadi that had gone catastrophically wrong. 16 of her unit had died covering an extraction that officially never happened. The Pentagon had erased the records. Erased her service. Erased her rank, her medals, her entire military existence. They told her it was temporary. They told her it was for national security. They told her she could never surface, never reveal her identity, never use her skills openly again. She'd signed documents. She'd accepted a new civilian identity. She'd taken a nursing job under her maiden name and disappeared into Houston. Tonight, she'd used skills that she wasn't supposed to have. She'd performed a procedure that required training she wasn't officially supposed to have received. She'd saved a man's life, and in doing so, she'd left evidence of what she really was. Her daughter fell asleep in her arms around 7:36 p.m., exhausted from the emotional weight of a day that didn't make sense. Ashley sat in the dark kitchen, still wearing her blood-stained scrubs, staring at nothing. The citation was still on the table. Her phone was dark. No messages from Seattle General. No emergency calls. Just silence, and the hum of failing fluorescents, and a mother who'd just destroyed 8 years of careful anonymity. 2 miles away, in a second-floor office at the Houston subway station, Derek Caldwell was in his chair with his feet on his desk, phone in hand, making calls. The Transit Board President, done. The City Councilman, already filed. The State Medical Licensing Board, 5 separate complaints logged. By midnight, there were investigations open. By 6:13 a.m., the story would hit the news cycle. By 8:06 a.m., everything would change. But in that dark kitchen, Ashley didn't know any of that yet. She just knew that somewhere, someone at the Pentagon was probably watching that same subway station footage and recognizing something in the way she moved, something in the medical procedure she'd performed, something that would set machinery in motion that she'd hoped would never turn again. She had no idea how fast that machinery would move. The next morning, every television in the subway station lobby cut to breaking news at precisely 6:16 a.m. The screens flickered simultaneously, all 12 of them, mounted above the ticket booths and information kiosks and security checkpoints. News anchors stared directly outward, their voices urgent and clipped. The headline scrolled across the bottom of each screen in white text against red, "Missing decorated combat medic found alive in Houston." Ashley's military photograph filled the screens. Her face in dress uniform, Master Chief Petty Officer insignia polished and visible, her expression measured and composed. Younger. Before the 8 years of erasure. Before the scrubs and the anonymous shift work and the forced forgetting. Before Derek Caldwell. Commuters stopped walking. The crowd gathering around the screens grew thicker with each passing second. Someone whispered. Someone else reached for their phone to video the newscast. The Pentagon had released a statement. An investigation into erased records had gone public. Official records had been falsified. A decorated Special Forces operator had been systematically removed from all documentation, her service classified, her existence denied. The veteran who had watched her save the deaf man stood motionless near Gate C, his jaw working silently. He stared at the photograph on the screens. Recognition moved across his face like a door opening in a locked room. He stood slowly, his hands trembling slightly, not from weakness, but from the weight of what he was seeing. His voice came out as barely a whisper at first. Nightingale. Then louder. Much louder. His voice cracked across the platform like a rifle shot. That woman's call sign was Nightingale. I heard it in Fallujah. I heard her voice on the radio when sniper fire pinned us down near the Jolan district. Nightingale doesn't abandon her people. The crowd turned toward him. People were still filming. Social media was already exploding, the video from yesterday of Ashley performing the emergency procedure, the police escorting her away, Caldwell smirking at reporters while calling her a vigilante. Now the context was shifting. The news was reframing. The woman they'd watched being arrested was no longer just a nurse. She was a legend. A subway security guard moved toward the veteran, then stopped. The guard was a former Marine, Ashley had learned that months ago when he'd started his shift. His name was Clayton. His bearing had always been military, his posture aligned, his eyes sharp. He stepped forward into the crowd, his jaw set hard as concrete. His voice was steady, authoritative, the kind of voice that came from a man who had commanded respect in places where respect meant survival. "She's a Master Chief Petty Officer. Special Forces. You idiots didn't know who you were standing next to." The platform went quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when people suddenly understand they've made a catastrophic mistake. The kind of quiet that tastes like shame. Within an hour, a 3-star general arrived at the subway station platform. Major General James Mercer. He moved with the kind of authority that made air pressure change. His dress uniform was pristine. His medals hung in perfect rows. The station manager on duty tried to intercept him near the platform entrance, but Mercer simply walked past, his boots echoing against tile in a rhythm like a heartbeat, like a command that required no words. He stood in the center of the platform where Ashley had performed the pericardiocentesis. Where commuters had filmed instead of helping. Where Derek Caldwell had threatened her. Mercer's aide handed him a folder, and he opened it with deliberate slowness. His voice when he spoke carried across the station and into the security cameras and onto every social media platform that was still streaming. "Master Chief Petty Officer Ashley Cooper served under my command in Ramadi for 3 operational cycles. Bronze Star." The crowd was silent. The general looked up from his citation. "Silver Star." Another pause. You could hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead. "Second Silver Star for Valor under fire." Mercer's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. 2 Purple Hearts. Shrapnel wounds in both legs. She continued operations for 17 hours despite blood loss at approximately 2 liters. His eyes tracked the assembled crowd. Navy Cross. 147 lives saved under direct enemy fire. 147. That is the official count. The actual number is higher because she didn't report 3 of the rescues. Protocol violation. She wasn't supposed to go outside the wire. She went anyway. He closed the folder. The Pentagon erased her records because a classified operation required her non-existence. She accepted that. She accepted 8 years of obscurity. She accepted working as a hospital nurse, hiding her qualifications, her training, her identity. And then she saved a man's life in this station yesterday. Performed an emergency surgical procedure under the pressure of a public platform. Did not hesitate. Did not freeze. Did not walk away. The general's eyes moved to the ambulance bay where the deaf veteran was being treated. She saved that man once in Ramadi 9 years ago, carrying him through sniper fire for 400 meters to extraction point. She saved him again yesterday. That is who was standing among you. Mercer looked directly at a security camera. That is who you were calling sweetheart. That is who you were mocking. The deaf veteran emerged from the ambulance, walking toward the general with cautious steps. His paramedic had cleared him for discharge pending further observation. He moved to the platform, and without hesitation, he began removing his jacket. The crowd gasped. Scars covered his torso, not the thin marks of surgical incisions, but the thick, ropey evidence of trauma. Shrapnel wounds. Burn marks. Defensive lacerations across his forearms where he'd shielded himself during the blast. A reporter rushed toward him with a microphone and an interpreter. The deaf veteran's hands began moving in rapid, precise ASL. His signs were emphatic, powerful, each gesture containing the weight of years. The interpreter's voice came through clear and trembling. "She saved me twice. Ramadi. 2015, sniper fire. She carried me out. Blood everywhere. Thought I was dead. She didn't leave me. Yesterday, she saved me again. My heart was failing. She knew what to do. She always knows what to do. She is Nightingale. I would follow her into hell." The platform fell silent for 10 long seconds. The kind of silence that feels like a held breath before the world changes. Then the applause began. Slow at first. Then building. Hands coming together. People who had filmed the arrest now filming the redemption. The crowd applauding a woman they had dismissed. Applauding a man they had mocked. Applauding the recognition of heroism that had always been there, waiting to be seen. Derek Caldwell was in his office when his secretary knocked. Not a casual knock. An urgent knock. The kind of knock that carried bad news. "Sir, you need to see this." She had a laptop with her. The news broadcast was still running on every major network. But worse were the other videos, the one from yesterday showing Caldwell mocking the deaf veteran, the one showing him betting $50 that Ashley would give up within 5 minutes, the one showing him knocking the coin cup across the platform. The transit authority's own internal email chain was circulating now, and Caldwell's name was appearing in threads he'd never seen before. Auditors asking questions. Legal asking for documentation. Someone had flagged his maintenance contracts. His phone rang at 7:14 a.m. It was his former mentor from business school. The man who had gotten Caldwell the station manager position. The man who sat on the transit board. The man who had vouched for his character, recommended him for promotion, put his name on Caldwell's qualifications. The man whose trust Caldwell had spent the last 3 years weaponizing for profit. "Derek, I just watched you mock a decorated combat veteran and a Navy Cross recipient on camera." The voice was ice. "I watched you bet on her like she was a dog. I watched you knock a disabled veteran's belongings toward the tracks. I watched you tell police that a woman who saved a man's life was practicing medicine without a license." Caldwell tried to speak. Words came out as fragments. "Sir, I didn't know, I was maintaining order. There was no way to." "You didn't know?" His mentor's voice went colder. "You didn't know when you mocked her hands? You didn't know when you made jokes about her to your security staff? You didn't know when you called the police? Derek, I've recommended you for positions. I've vouched for your character. I put my name on you. I made you. And you've made me look like a fool on national television." The line went dead. Within the hour, an emergency transit board meeting was convened. Caldwell was placed on immediate administrative leave. His office was sealed. Auditors arrived with warrants. The maintenance billing irregularities became clear almost immediately: inflated invoices, work documented but never completed, kickbacks to city officials who signed off on fraudulent contracts worth $847,000 over 36 months. What had started as public humiliation became criminal investigation. The state comptroller's office opened a file. The FBI sent inquiries. Caldwell's city council contact stopped returning calls. His lawyer advised him to prepare for fraud charges. That night, the local news ran the full arc of the story: Master Chief Petty Officer erased by Pentagon in classified operation, living quietly as hospital nurse in Houston, mocked and arrested by station manager now under investigation for embezzlement. The juxtaposition was devastating. One woman had spent 8 years serving others in obscurity. The other had spent the same time stealing from the system. Caldwell watched from his apartment, his career dissolving in real time like footage on an old film reel burning. His phone rang constantly, reporters, former colleagues distancing themselves, the transit authority's legal team, his lawyer repeating the same phrase: "Don't answer. Don't comment. Wait for counsel." He didn't answer. 6 months later, the Houston subway station had been officially renamed Cooper Station. A bronze plaque hung near the main entrance, commemorating the rescue of a deaf veteran by a decorated combat medic. The deaf veteran now worked as a VA liaison, helping other vets navigate healthcare. The station had been renovated. New security protocols. New training. The platform where the arrest had happened now held a memorial marker with a single date: the day Nightingale came home. Ashley walked through that station in her dress uniform. Master Chief Petty Officer insignia polished and visible. Navy cross hanging above her left chest pocket. Her combat boots, not the worn pair from Ramadi, but regulation, broken imperfectly, the leather soft from use. She was there for a Veterans Assistance Program launch ceremony, a partnership between the VA and Houston Transit Authority. The mayor was waiting. The three-star general was waiting. The media had been invited. This was official. This was recognition. She stopped near the entrance where a folding table had been set up. Behind it sat Derek Caldwell in a cheap polo shirt with an insurance company logo stitched over the pocket. Rate sheets lay flat on the table. Business cards arranged in neat stacks. A laminated price list explaining commuter insurance options. Caldwell was trying to smile at passing commuters, his voice rehearsed and desperate. Commuter insurance, very affordable, protects against transit delays and missed connections. People walked past without looking. One woman recognized him, whispered something to her companion, and they gave the table a wide berth. An elderly man with a briefcase looked at a business card, read Caldwell's name, and set it back down with deliberate care. Caldwell saw Ashley approaching. His face went pale. All the blood seemed to drain from his features, leaving him looking like something carved from soap. He opened his mouth. Closed it. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to find words. Finally, look, I didn't know who you were. If I had known, you would have treated that veteran with respect. Ashley's voice was quiet. Measured. The voice of someone who had given orders on battlefields and been obeyed. Only if you knew someone was watching. Caldwell had no answer. His mouth worked silently. Ashley picked up one of his business cards. She examined it with the kind of focus a general might use reviewing battle plans. She read the name, the phone number, the insurance company branding. Then she placed it back down, precisely centered on his stack, her movement exact as a surgical procedure. You called me sweetheart, she said quietly. You bet $50 I'd walk away. You knocked a disabled man's belongings toward the tracks. She paused. None of that required knowing my rank. She turned to leave, then stopped. A general told me something once. True class is what you do when the lights go out. She gestured at the bright station, the cameras, the ceremony setup, the uniforms and medals and official recognition. These lights are very bright now, Mr. Caldwell. But you showed us exactly who you are when you thought no one important was watching. She walked away toward the ceremony platform where the mayor and the three-star general waited. Her boots echoed against the tile in that same military rhythm. Authority made visible through footfalls. Caldwell sat behind his folding table, surrounded by thousands of commuters, completely invisible. The deaf veteran passed nearby, working as a VA liaison in his official capacity. He noticed Caldwell at the table. Without breaking stride, without looking directly at him, he signed something, his hands moving in ASL with the precision of someone delivering a message. A nearby interpreter, part of the station's new protocol for accessibility, translated aloud so nearby commuters could hear, Karma has perfect aim. Caldwell remained at his table, trying to smile at commuters who didn't see him, selling nothing to no one, while the ceremony platform filled with the sound of a community finally witnessing what had always been true. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been underestimated by someone in authority, or if you've witnessed compassion being punished by those who profit from cruelty, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with someone who needs to know that true heroism often walks among us unrecognized, and that service measured in silence is still service measured in lives. Comment below, have you ever had to stand firm for what's right, even when no one important was watching? Let's build a community that honors the quiet heroes. Thank you for watching.